Welcome to FUAN Talk. We at Families United Action Network seek to bring back the lost art of conversations on the topic of family law reform. And now your host, Nicholas Dreeszen.
Today we are joined with some special guests. We have a retired judge, Judge Gary McKenrick, and we also have the leader of the Iowa Disabled American Veterans, David Thornburg, Senator Jeff Edler from Iowa. So we're going to get into some child support issues, but first we're going to pause for just a second and play a PowerPoint that some of our members have put together with some of our recommendations that go into child support as well as connecting over into helping to protect our disabled defenders.
Hello, and thank you for taking the time today to learn about the legislative bill that we are proposing. This legislative bill is concerning child support and how that is calculated for our disabled veterans versus our disabled non-veteran citizens here in the state of Iowa. Our presentation today should not take more than about 5 minutes, and I will have contact information for any further questions you may have at the end of our presentation. And so let's get started. So under our current law, there is two different standards and ways that child support obligations are calculated for the two different types of disability. When somebody who is a non-veteran receives Social Security disability and they have dependents, they will receive whatever their individual disability amount is, and then they will receive additional monies to cover the cost of care of dependents. Now, when they have a child support order, that additional money that is the dependent care satisfies the obligation for child support with no money taken out of their individual benefits that they have been determined to receive by the government. However, that's not the way child support is calculated when our disabled individual happens to also be a veteran. If somebody is a veteran and has VA disability, they also receive their individual disability monies, and if they have dependents, they do also receive some additional money for that dependent care. However, when the courts determine child support for an individual who is a veteran who is disabled, the courts look at the entire amount of money that the VA is paying that individual, and they use that as income, and then they determine the amount of money that the court feels the individual should be paying for child support, which oftentimes takes money away from that individual benefit in addition to that dependent care that the individual is receiving. So what effect does this have? Well, obviously under our current law, our disabled veterans are actually being discriminated against rather than having the same set of standards applied to their disability payments as our non-veteran disabled counterparts. And this causes our disabled veterans to have even more limited financial resources, and so that is definitely a problem for them. And so what is VA disability? We are assuming that most of you do understand what VA disability is. It's very similar to our regular Social Security disability. The only main difference is that this is disability payments specifically for disabled veterans with a service-connected disability. Otherwise, again, it's very, very similar to Social Security disability for our civilian citizens. So what does our proposition accomplish? Well, our proposed law change ensures that both forms of disability are treated equally under the law. Therefore, that would be eliminating the discrimination that is currently practiced towards our disabled veterans. It also ensures that our disabled veterans are going to receive the full amount of money allotted to them by the federal government to provide for their own needs, thereby helping to protect their own financial stability. So how does our proposition accomplish this? Well, the bill we are proposing requests that VA disability payments be treated exactly the same as Social Security disability payments when a court is determining the amount of child support that an individual needs to pay. What does our proposition not do? Our proposed law change does not eliminate the obligation of a disabled veteran to pay child support. We understand that children need that support, families need that support, and our veterans are certainly going to be continuing to fulfill their obligations as they always have. Our proposed law change does not increase the total amount of VA disability benefits received. It simply takes that dependent piece as fulfilling the child support obligations. So the individual amount that the federal government has allotted to the person and determined the person is to receive will fully go to the individual and not be taken for child support payments. And our proposed law change does not affect child custody in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Child support and child custody are two very separate things, and we are certainly not touching that with this law change. So we ask that you please show your support for our disabled veterans by supporting our bill. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact Families United Action Network. Their website is www.familiesunite.org, or you can email them at FUANnetwork@gmail.com, which is spelled FUANETWORK@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Welcome back. And today, again, we would like to thank our sponsors. And if you would like to be a sponsor, please go to our website at www.familiesunite.org. Please remember that all of our efforts are done as volunteers, including our website, all of our legislative work. So please do your part and get involved. Now we're going to bring in Retired Judge Gary McKenrick. Gary McKenrick is the author of this disabled veterans bill that we were just listening to this presentation about. So welcome, Gary.
It's good to be with you.
So Gary, how did you kind of discover this, and what led you to point this out to our team to help get this authored?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call myself the author of it. I had a client that I was representing, who's disabled veteran, involved in a child support matter, and that's really what attracted me to the issue, I guess you'd say. I'd certainly run across it as a judge before I retired from the bench a few times, but not that often. But after going back into practice after leaving the bench, having this client and confronting that situation where it's treated so much differently than the Social Security disability is, it just struck me as something that was fundamentally unfair. And so, over the course of my representation of that client and subsequent to our completion of the court proceedings with that, he and I continued to talk about it, and I think he got involved legislatively, and I simply tried to help him out as best I could with what seems to me to be something that's just fundamentally unfair.
Okay, and could you simplify it? And I mean, the presentation did explain it, but what is this this unfair situation in layman's terms?
Well, Social Security disability payments that are classified as dependent disability support essentially satisfy a person's child support obligation, and veterans disability, when you have the dependent portion of that, it is simply added into the total amount of the veteran's income and used to calculate child support, just as if it was earned income from someone working full-time or more. So,
okay. So if I'm understanding this correct, there's Social Security disability and there's VA disability, and the child support for either of them are calculated differently, but our disabled veterans are paying a higher rate in child support than those that are other people who are on SSI disability. Is that correct?
They're treated differently, and I think as a general rule, it ends up being that the veteran who's on veterans disability pays more in child support than a similarly situated recipient of Social Security disability.
Okay, so that's kind of shocking to know that we would, that's our way of saying thank you to our servicemen and women, especially those who may have sacrificed in a limb or hearing or whatever way that they became disabled. So with that, I'm going to bring in our other guest here, David Thornburg. David Thornburg is actually the leader of Iowa's Disabled American Veterans. So David, welcome. First, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, the organization, and how it relates to this topic, if you've seen this firsthand, and how you feel about this topic?
Yes, I'm the state commander for the Disabled American Veterans of Iowa. And a lot of veterans that we help within the organization is because of child support issues, them adding their VA compensation and not treating it like Social Security. So that was our 2020, 2021 initiatives, and we'll be backing the bill again this year.
Thank you.
And we're behind you 110%.
And I noticed that this last year we had all other service-related organizations, the Veterans Affairs, VFW, were all registered in favor and support of this as well. It's kind of a little bit off course, but still kind of on course when we look at the issue of the 22 a day that we are losing on average to suicide of our servicemen and women. And there's a site that I was seeing that 17 of those men and women on average are also going through the family courts one way or another. And so do you think that, in your opinion, David, can you explain what a man or woman might face as some of these troubles as they come back, or especially now multiple deployments, and how that could affect also to getting that increased chance of being disabled and coming into the situation that we're talking about where you'd be paying that child support?
Yes, because everybody forgets what VA compensation is. It's a quality of life issue. You lost either a limb, you get the cancers from exposure, Agent Orange, or older veterans, or younger veterans from toxins. They're not able to work. And now what they're doing is when they add their compensation, they are hurting the veteran so much that they end up homeless. And they can't go to HUD-VASH because they only have 21 certificates to give out in the state. So it does not take care of the veteran population. Here we have 48,000 disabled veterans in the state of Iowa right now, and from 0 to 100%. And it does affect the ones that we're helping needing food. And you're like, oh, you're 80%. Okay, you should be, bringing in $1,800 a month. But since they're taking a big portion of that, you're living on $900 now. And some don't qualify for Social Security disability for some odd reason. So that's all they're living on. And you cannot live on that. Yes, we should take care of our children, but we're not saying that, the DAV, we're not saying not pay your child support, but be fair like Social Security. And we totally agree with changing this bill, making it right.
And do you think that there are, if we look at the fact that 17 out of the 22 are possibly going through family court before they decide to take their own life, to me, that's a big deciding factor that it seems we need to look at the family courts of how we could ease some of that stress there. Is there any other solutions that you can think of? We've discussed earlier on the first half of this, starting off with shared parenting as the rebuttable presumption of starting divorces, just to be able to have that equal footing. Is that something that you would support, or are there other ways to stabilize that family so they're not put in such a hard position to begin with?
Yes, totally agree. Try to, especially with our disabled veterans coming back with, like I said earlier, you said on multiple deployments, there's a lot of mental issues along with the physical, which already is going to be hard on the marriage the way it is. So we're trying to get them into counseling when we see it. That's part of the deal that we do with the VA. And, I wish we could do more. I would love to start a task force and see what we can do.
Well, I think you're doing an amazing job with all the efforts I've seen you doing so far. So, David, please keep up the good work. Judge McKormick, could you please tell us your thoughts on some other ways that we could help with the veterans and the family unit and destabilize that before they would ever think about being in a position to take their own life? As well as what would be your thoughts on that bill that I discussed with the Senator Edler earlier of starting with a rebuttable presumption of shared parenting with clear and convincing evidence? I'd really be interested to hear your view of that from behind the bench.
Starting out with the first question, I think the court system has been trying to address some of those issues over the last probably about 15 years or so. Various what generically are called problem-solving courts have been established in various counties across the state. Some of the first ones were drug courts dealing with those individuals with substance abuse issues. That expanded into family drug courts, which was basically within the juvenile court system and the child welfare system when they get to juvenile court, to try and provide more support in those situations to prevent child removal from parents. The principal problem was a substance abuse issue. It's broadened out into, we have mental health courts now, and I believe that Polk County now might have a veterans court. There might be a couple others in other areas of the state to deal specifically with broad-based issues confronting veterans. Are they home? Are they in danger of being homeless? Are they homeless? Are there mental health issues peculiar to the status as a veteran that can be addressed? And so that's one more of those problem-solving court setups that the court system is specifically aimed at the veteran population. Obviously, all of those specialty courts work on the basis of devoting more court resources, time, judicial time, support staff time, social service agency involvement, and so when you break out into those specialty problem-solving court systems, ultimately it does require more financial resources to fully staff those things. And the question is always, how quickly can you show the payback? You put money into these systems with the idea that you're going to ultimately head off more serious problems and more serious financial obligations for the state on down the road, or for families on down the road. And some of those things are hard to measure, but that's really the goal of it. I always took the approach. I was lucky enough to be involved in getting the drug court in Scott County up and running, and I always took the approach that all these problem-solving courts are a little bit like the old Fram oil filter commercial, where they said, you pay me now or you pay me later. And that's really kind of the message behind all of those problem-solving courts and what they need to do. With respect to your second question about the legislation, to start with a presumption of equality and a clear and convincing standard of proof to vary from a shared care ruling. Every judge doesn't come to the bench, as a blank slate. We all we all were practicing lawyers in various areas before we became judges. We all have our own individual family histories that impact our decision making. And one of the challenges, I think, of being a judge is being able to recognize what might be your implicit biases and try to set those aside and address them in a fair and impartial way. You know, I'd like to think that I was 100% successful at doing that when I was on the bench. I'd be a fool to claim that, though. Clearly, no one can fully set aside their background and their experience in making some of those determinations. So the question is really, you know, what kind of structure does the system create to help the decision maker do that? And clearly, you know, one of the things that we do in our country, in our judicial system, is a belief that the adversarial system helps to do that. There's a lot of question about that, how effective that is, and certainly it's given rise to mediation in the family law area that's virtually statewide now. It doesn't happen to be mandatory in my district, in the 7th district, but all the other districts in the state do have some form of mandatory mediation in the family law area.
Well, and speaking of mandatory, you can see how this is not a mandate, that this is another tool for the judge to have. Would you agree?
Sure. The current law, going back to some of my comments, the current law on its face says that there is no bias in favor of mothers versus fathers and vice versa in these custody determinations. That's the black letter law. You know, I think the issue is really one of implicit bias, because I perceive that if you look at if a study was done of the actual outcomes, it would indicate that there's still some kind of bias in the system. And so, you know, your proposed change would be certainly one way to confront what appears to be a remaining implicit bias within the system that we haven't been able to address, you know, up to this point.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said there about, you know, getting that lower animosity, we look at states like Kentucky and Arkansas that have already adopted this language, and they have seen domestic abuse go down. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but hopefully we can pop them up on the screen. It's been significant. People start working together and agreeing, figuring out ways to collaborate rather than turning every small thing into a giant war. And so we thank you for your time and for coming on here to help explain all of this. David Thornburg, it looked like you wanted to respond to a couple of those things that he was saying, perhaps.
Yes, it'd be nice to all get together like this again and discuss more in detail how it would affect more of the disabled veterans, because the ones that we run into, like the Veterans Court, there's one in Sioux City, but there's not one in Polk County. They're still working on that. That's been a fight for the last 5 years that I know of through the commission, and when the Iowa Veterans Council was running, we wanted to help more of our disabled veterans. And then I ran into you, and you enlightened me about the law on. I just can't believe that we can't follow federal law that says that you cannot touch the VA compensation. It's tax free. You don't have to claim it on taxes, all that. But the state of Iowa recognizes it for everything. So I'm kind of off track here, but if a disabled veteran, like I said, it was 80% getting 1,800, they split it, and he gets 900 now, child support 900. That he or she cannot even file for food stamps because Iowa says they cut the whole thing and they add child support in there. So
David, would you say that there is a military culture out there that is more awake to these family issues? And so do you feel that the majority are willing to step up and have their voice be heard, or do you feel that they are still kind of silenced and scared to step up and feel that might, even if they step up, they might lose even more parenting time, and that could be another consequence simply by speaking up?
yeah, and a lot of them are afraid because they're felt if they don't pay this, then they're going to be a bad parent. And some of them that I ran into, the spouse, he or she, uses that as leverage when it comes to the kids. And they're saying, oh, you don't care for your kids, you just care about yourself when you can't work because of a service connection disability. A lot of it's pride. They don't want to say nothing because they feel weak, that they're weak. And the ones that I've ran into, I mean, they would step up if they knew that, like this, people want to jump in and help. I would like to have like a flyer, and I could send it out to all my chapters in the state and get the word out more.
Well, I think you'd already mentioned that you hope we can have more of these conversations, and we've had Senator Jeff Edler waiting patiently, listening in on this conversation. So I'm about to bring him in, but I think I'm really hopeful that just simply making this video is part of that way of helping, that we can let more of the public tune in to find out about this issue, and that you will have that courage to step up. And it does take an army, especially of volunteers. We're not in this for money and glory. We're in this for the good of the humankind. And so we're not asking for a lot from anybody, but we are asking for a little bit from a lot of people. So
Yep.
Step up and do your part. Get a hold of us at familiesunite.org. David, where can they get a hold of you?
They can email me at tankrockape@gmail.com. That's TANKROCKAPE
Okay.
at Gmail.
Thank you. Go ahead and stick around. I might come back to you here, but I'm going to go ahead and bring in Senator Edler. Again, I said he's been patiently waiting, and I know that he's not unfamiliar with this issue. We've been discussing this with him for a couple of years, but I want to I think he's also very aware that if we were talking fully a child support issue, that could be its own episode in itself, and that most of those issues deal with the federal law. And so we're going to try and keep this to the state law, and particularly the bill that we have presented that we've given him time to review. I know something that your colleagues have said to us is that this would give the appearance that we are taking money away from children. And I think that we've discussed that quite significantly here, but I can't say it any clearer. Nobody is trying to say that child support should not be paid or that anybody should not take care of their child. We are saying that we should, at minimum, treat our disabled defenders equal to anybody else who's disabled. And I don't think that's asking for a lot. I think as humankind, you know deep in your heart, they deserve to be treated a lot better than that. So, Senator Edler, you have experience serving, you have experience in the legislature. Please give us your feelings on this proposal, what you think might be needed to be tweaked, if you think you can get behind it, what might kill it.
Well, I do have some new questions. One of them that came up after the conversation, became apparent that some veterans who are receiving the VA disability are not qualified for SSI. I'd like to get a quantification of how many or what the percentage is in Iowa that is not qualified for SSI that's receiving VA disability, if that would be possible.
David, I'm hoping you can help me with that, but we'll try and work together on that. I don't have any of the numbers right now myself.
There's no numbers for that. I just happened to get from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs here a list of disabled veterans that are in the state, and all of them is 48,000. So out of that 48,000, there's no list to find out. We'd have to ask them, which is in violation of their rights. So on asking a question like that, but there is no numbers for that.
One other question that I have would be, do we know the number of veterans that are receiving the VA disability that this law would affect out of those 48,000?
I don't, David. I'm gonna have to circle back with you if there are numbers like that, David.
No, it's like asking somebody for SSI if you're on Social Security disability. It's there's no numbers unless that one I'd have to, but I'm saying there's not, but maybe we can find a way to make it happen if it's not. So yeah, it's really good. It'd be nice to know.
If I could jump in, and I don't know the answer to the senator's questions, but I do know that the court information system, ISIS, is a searchable system, and I don't know whether a search can be constructed to be able to determine how many child support determinations have a veteran's disability calculation included within the system. Again, I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just throwing that out to the senator, that may be something that he might be able to, through the legislative process, to glean from the court information system.
Okay, and I'll take a look at that more in depth too. I wasn't aware that, or not readily aware, I guess, that if they were receiving VA, they weren't necessarily qualified for SSI. So that was kind of a new piece of information for me too.
Okay, what other questions might you have, or how can we help you with this?
I would throw out one other thing. Dave talked about the mental health of veterans, and one of the things that I would ask him and his organization to advocate is to have those veterans reach out for the services. Our mental health regions are doing a great job trying to get services out to those who need it. One of the biggest obstacles we face in the state of Iowa is people don't want the services or just won't allow them to come in and help them. So I would throw that out to be cognizant that is a definite situation. I know there are those who seek services, but there's also those who need them that won't seek or accept. So,
well, Senator, like we just discussed earlier too, there's some that feel that shame or even like it could be held as leverage against them during some of these issues we've discussed today. But I still no matter what, if you're in these situations, I would agree with the senator, and please reach out. Do you happen to know any of the numbers or websites or something that we can put on the screen here for those who are watching?
I can get that to you. We are working and have a hotline.
And it's not something to be ashamed of. There are so many other people that are going through this, and that's again why we're having these conversations, is so that you know you're not alone, and that you know that there are ways that you can step up in an organization or organizations that you can work with that are going to help protect you, that you can just help the organization without putting yourself at risk. You can do something for the cause without having your personal story be out there or being a target. But most importantly, if you are in that position where no matter what kind of help it is, it's not weakness to ask for help. It is going to take a team of people to be able to work together. And thank you so much, David. The crisis line is right there, 1-800-273-8255. And Senator, if you have other information, please send that and we'll put that on the screen as well. So Senator, back to you.
Okay, I'll give you the Your Life Iowa is 855-581-8111.
And if there's anything else, you can send it to us and we can get this put on the screen later on. So Senator, do you feel that you're following the way that this issue breaks down now, and how even though preconceived notions and how the politics at play of it might appear to be taking money away from children, but when you actually equate it out, most of the time it's not. There are times where it may, to be honest, yes. But is that any more or less fair than charging our disabled defenders more? I mean, how do we beat politics with common sense here?
Well, and that's part of the reason why I asked for some of those numbers, because I think there is a relevance to making sure the veteran has ample resources to basically live the quality of life. I agree with Dave on that. That money is there to help, really to help them pertain a quality of life that they essentially were robbed of through something that went wrong when they were in service. So I think those are some things that are going to definitely need to be waded through to try and combat some of the possible negativity of why it shouldn't happen. And, you know, the way we do that is with facts and data. So I would say that's probably going to be my first starting point. If we're going to bring this forward, we got to be able to show why it's unfair, not just a generalized view of it, because if we're weighting the child versus the veteran, we really got to have the data to say, well, okay, so this veteran is receiving VA, not receiving SSI, and now they're taking half of his VA benefits. What's he got to live on and have a quality of life? I mean, that's very important to understand. So I think there are some things out here that could help support this argument greatly if we can get to the bottom of them.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that, and thank you for joining us. For those who would like to be in contact with you, especially those, we want to always, if you're going to get a hold of the senator, please make sure that you have a reason to, preferably in their district. Always keep it kind and respectful. But for those who would like to reach out to you, could you please give your best way to get a hold of you, Senator?
Yep, it's jeff.edler@legis.iowa.gov. Or my cell number is 641-751-5902.
Okay, again, thank you, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Again, as we've seen throughout the years, we've always known that you have been one who've always rolled up your sleeves and dived into the research, even if that meant sometimes that we needed to be patient because you had 100 other issues that you were wading through. We knew that you were going to do your due diligence and get out your weed whacker and forge a path for others to be able to follow. So again, thank you, and thank you for joining us. To your honor, Judge Gary McKenrick, for those who would wish to get a hold of you, how might they be able to reach you?
My email is Gary McKenrick Law. It's GaryMckenrick RICKLAW@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm hoping we might invite you back for a couple of the other issues, dive in a little bit deeper on this shared parenting bill. David Thornburg again with Disabled American Veterans. We can thank you all for being here. Does anybody else have any final thoughts on how we might together face these family law reform issues and protect not only the veterans, but each and every child and citizen of America to make this a stronger world for everybody? We'll just close it on that then. And again, I thank you all for being here. Keep up that good thought. Remember, if you have the willingness to step up and volunteer, get a hold of me or David. We will get you some ways to be able to help out. And if you need help, reach out. Thank you very much. Have a great night.